Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile, and this is a show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you're listening, however you're listening, you know exactly what to do. Like and subscribe on YouTube, 5-star review on Spotify, and say some really nice things about me and my incredible guest here on Apple Podcasts. Today I have Sean Topchi with me. He's the Director of Business Development at Kinectify. Sean, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. How you doing, man?
Merry Christmas. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. Excited to learn a little bit about Kinectify. Excited to learn a little bit about your career living in Vegas, growing up in sports betting. I mean, we've seen all the movies, right? I have to assume it's like practically the same thing. But, Sean, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
Honestly, I mean, I grew up competing in sports. I'm Argentine, so I actually grew up with a lot of soccer. So this has been a good month, we'll say, to say the least.
You can say we on this one too, right? Like, I'm a Mets fan. I say we all the time, meaning me and the Mets. But like, it's a little different for you, I assume.
It's especially with South American soccer, it's the passion and the emotion is on a different level. I'm not sure for the most part that I actually end up enjoying the game while it's happening because I'm so stressed out and my blood pressure is like up here while the game, especially, I mean, that incredible final against France. I'm pretty sure after the second goal by Mbappe, I went through every stage of grief and assumed the game was going to end 4-2 with Argentina losing. It was like we had to win it 3 times to actually win it between the extra time and the PK. So it was, and then after that, I mean, it was insanity in my household. We were going nuts. I think me and my dad might have gotten emotional. Probably shouldn't admit that. He will never admit to it, but it was incredible, man.
Hey, man, I cry more about sports than just about anything else on planet Earth. So, no, I get that, man. It is, it's a beautiful thing, and that's why we do it, right? This is why we love the industry that we're in so much, is because we get to deal with people who are passionate, right? I'm sitting on the couch watching all these college football games this week because it's, incredible. I don't have a dog in the fight, and I love every single one of them. I love every single one of them, and I wouldn't change it for the world, Sean. And that's why we do what we do, man. And I mean, you growing up in Vegas, like, sports betting just became, quote unquote legal. It's been legal in Vegas for a very long time, and I want to say like Washington State too. They just never did anything with it, so that's like a weird one. But right, like we've had, we repeal of PASPA 2018 has made sports betting significantly more widespread. But you grew up in Vegas where that's what it was, right? Like Jimmy the Greek, like all these guys, Chris Berman giving out really weird numbers. Even like at 12, I was so confused. I was like, Dad, I've never seen a football game end 21-22. He's like, you'll get it. You'll get it one day. And it's because he's working the spread in, and I never realized that until, only a few years ago. But what was it like kind of growing up in that environment? I know it's only the only thing you've known, but for the rest of the world, the rest of the country to understand kind of what is it like? We've seen all the movies, right? As I said facetiously before. What's it like growing up in that type of environment where these things are not just normal, they're almost encouraged?
I mean, honestly, part of me didn't even know it was weird to be so into gambling, so knowledgeable about gambling, not just sports betting, right? Poker, the table games, blackjack, everything, craps, and sports betting. I didn't know how weird it was until I started getting older and, venturing outside of Vegas really more. And especially with sports betting, I had been working, like I told you, I worked at Caesars. And so I've been so used to seeing, we had sports books at every single property. And it wasn't until I really started consulting, and I think I went to 20 different states while I was consulting, that I realized, oh, that's right. The rest of the world, didn't have this, and this is new to them, and they're figuring it out, which made me realize I kind of had a unique skill set almost when I would go to these other jurisdictions who haven't been doing it for as long.
Yeah, I mean, you have a leg up, right? I tell all my friends and anybody, like, try and get into this industry as soon as possible because I've been in it for 3 years, and the industry, like online gambling, quote-unquote online sports betting, has only been around for 4. So in 5 years, I'm going to have 8 years of experience in an industry that's 9 years old, right? And, like, extrapolate that out over time. I don't plan on leaving the industry. Obviously, things change, but it's something like that that's going to allow me to solidify myself. But you've been in the industry your entire life, literally. So, like, it's just one of those things, as you said, your unique skill set, your unique, expertise on something just kind of comes from, nature. And I guess, like, how interested growing up, we don't have to say any of the stories we're not supposed to, but, like, how interested, it sounds like you were pretty knowledgeable about these games at 21? You just kind of happened to hop on a poker table and just knew all the rules at that point, I guess?
So, I mean, we were definitely hosting, home poker games when we were growing up. Honestly, I think we
But
were
like just
probably
for like gummy bears, right? Like it's not a big deal.
yeah, of course, of course. Probably for too many gummy bears by the time we were in high school, but no, I've always been fascinated by the industry, and so even as soon as I turned, 21, I think the first thing we did was go to a casino, sit on a blackjack table, spend some time there, then hit the roulette table, then the grand finale for the night was we had all saved up our money and we went to the craps table, and so I there were so many nights where I wasn't betting a lot per se, but I was there for so long that I was even seeing, the shift changes, starting to understand like the different counts that they were doing and all of like the controls that were kind of in place for, keeping the money safe, keeping the chips safe, keeping them organized, transporting, the totes and the cash and everything. So that when I actually started working in it, everything kind of already made sense. Like I didn't need markers to be explained to me. I didn't need the shift rolls and shift changes to be explained to me. I knew what the coin in and coin out and a lot of the definitions that you kind of have to start teaching people when they start. Not only did I know them, I could visualize them, which I think was hugely helpful.
That is really interesting. Yeah, if you spend enough time in places, you start to pick up on things, right? Like I worked in a restaurant for about 9 years, so now when I go to restaurants, I see all the little things that other people don't, right? So it's kind of one of those that you have that opportunity, and it's about the awareness. I love to talk about awareness on here because if you're not paying attention to your surroundings and what's happening around you, you're losing out, right? Like just pay a little bit of attention to the people and what they're doing. And it sounds like you took advantage of that being there, especially in growing up in Vegas. And you said something earlier. You said the interest in the industry, right? Like I am extremely interested in the industry. I don't bet like high dollar amounts. Like, that's fine. Like I like having a little skin on the game. I'm not going to lose my mortgage or anything. That's just me personally. But what do you think it is about the industry, not so much from the player side, but the people that work in its side, outside of the money, because that's easy, right? What is it about this industry that attracts people like you, like myself, that just, for some reason, I love working in the sports betting industry. And again, I don't really bet like that many dollars.
I mean, I think part of it is because the industry is so focused around entertainment, right? Like, it's not like going to work at a bank where it's purely a transactional interaction. There's such a huge hospitality factor to it, and but most human beings, myself especially, I'm a very social creature. So the fact that the industry I work in is around this very, very social environment, very competitive environment, especially as you start to talk about sports betting and integrating sports with the industry, to me, it's just got all the excitement. It's got adrenaline almost, which I don't think your normal like corporate job is going to have. So I think that's kind of what pulls me into it. But I've also just been a student of it for so long. One of my favorite things to do when I was consulting was every property I'd visit, and I think I visited over 40 properties personally. I would tour the property. I wanted to see the whole gaming floor, the layout, the way they had it set up, where the high limit rooms were, how they kind of set it apart, what their like slot machine comparison to the amount of tables they had, what that ratio looked like based on local markets versus destination markets and everything like that. It's just those kinds of numbers along with it always fascinated me too.
That's, again, going back to awareness. Very, very smart on your part, because then you could take that information and spread that around and let people know, hey, I saw this way here. Maybe we should try it. Or, hey, I see the way you have this set up. Maybe you should try something I saw over here that might be more helpful, right? And that makes sense, right? It's like that grocery store theory where the eggs and the milk are always going to be in the back because you have to walk all the way through the store to get there. I'm sure there's something like that in a casino. I noticed when I was in Vegas a couple weeks ago, a lot of sports books, you gotta walk a little bit. They're really not like, open up the door and they're there. Some of them you had to walk a little bit to actually get to, which makes sense. That's the place people want to go. But along the way, you're going to pass a couple hundred slot machines. So, if you just want to stop, take a break, right? Pull a slot, never hurt, I don't think.
Well, and that's really the goal of so many in-person sports books, right? Is to generate that foot traffic throughout the rest of the casino. Because if you really think about the margins on sports betting, it's not a ton for casinos. So unless you just have absolute massive volume which I think online gives us the ability to have a little bit more. But for in person, it's getting people in the door, and not just the slot machines and the tables, but all the other amenities, especially here in Vegas, that we have now with the shows, the amazing array of restaurants, and just all the different kinds of entertainment that you have around you now.
All the magic shows, man. That guy, what's his name? You told me last name.
Oh, Shin Lim.
Shin Lim, dude. When I was in Vegas, I saw a poster for that guy every 5 seconds. He must be killing it. I can't wait to come back. I just want to come back to see his show at this point because he's that darn famous. It's absolutely incredible. So you brought up working at Caesars for a little bit. Spoiler, I also worked at Caesars. Unfortunately, our times did not cross over, which would have been pretty cool. But you start at Caesars, as you said, in an industry, and you come on it as an intern, but you said you already had the knowledge, the information, a lot of this expertise just from the visualization and the awareness that you carried while being there. You started as an intern, and you go to manager. I mean, like, that's like not an easy thing to do in 4 years. What do you think led you to be able to do that? Like, is that just pure work ethic and dedication, or was there something a little extra that you carry with this industry that allowed you to kind of work that ladder up a little bit higher?
I think there's a number of factors to it. So I guess I'll start with where I started, right? As you alluded to, I was an intern at Caesars. I was getting my accounting degree at UNLV. Hated every single minute of accounting.
Yeah, me too.
So I did this internship, and the Title 31 or anti-money laundering department, like the corporate consolidated function, was pretty new at the time. This is 2013, spoiler alert. I think it was 2015 that the enforcement action came out against Caesars. By that time, they had already knew that something was coming, so it's why they formed this department. And it was my last stop, and I started to learn more about, the suspicious activity investigations and these, high-level customer due diligence investigations, especially on your, like, high net worth, like Far East, Middle Eastern customers. And it just sounded so much more fascinating than accounting, that I just kind of dove into it head first and really loved it. And I got very lucky in that I hadn't even graduated yet when Barbara, the controller at the time, asked me if I wanted to stay on board, and they'd worked around my schedule. And from there, it was kind of a unique position in that because they knew the enforcement action was coming, they were trying to, really grow that department rapidly and, start remediating any identified issues rapidly. So from the time I joined to the time I left, I think the department started at like 11 or 12 people, and it was like 88 people. When I was a manager, and I eventually moved on to my next position. So I think part of it was, one, I was so fascinated by it. I was always trying to improve the department. I was trying to automate the, manual processes. And I was always trying to learn more about the different areas of anti-money laundering. Two, it was a unique position to be in where you have so much growth in the department, especially in a company that I think at the time had 35, 36 domestic properties, that you just get to see so much being at that corporate level and doing work for most, if not all, of those properties.
Right place, right time, and then take advantage of the situation, man. Like, kudos
Exactly.
and congratulations to you for doing that, and being able to kind of figure that out, and really figuring out what you didn't want to do, which was accounting. So totally respect that. Good for you.
Never
Man.
done it a day in my life and don't plan to at this point.
Please, yeah, I don't think you're gonna want to. I think there's way cooler things you could do. If you could give us a grasp on how important anti-money laundering is in the casino space, because I think people are like, yeah. That's okay. It makes sense, but like, can you give us kind of the gravity of that type of situation?
So I think there's two real approaches to explaining the importance of anti-money laundering. One, obviously, it's part of the Bank Secrecy Act that was strengthened by the USA Patriot Act back in 9/11 era. Obviously, the whole purpose of it is to safeguard the financial system, and by law, casinos are considered part of financial institutions in definition, for anti-money laundering purposes. So, there's the very frank approach of, hey, it's the law, you have to do it, and there's a lot of laws and it's complicated, and the expectations are very high for it. Kind of the approach I've always taken is we don't really want bad actors in our casinos, right? You don't want human traffickers. You don't want individuals who are exploiting, elderly individuals and exploiting their finances and things like that. So to me, it's important. One, you're safeguarding the financial system. You're also protecting the casino, but you're protecting the vulnerable in general, right? And building a relationship with law enforcement so that these people can be better identified. Because at the end of the day, I mean, maybe they're spending some money at your property, but they're probably using your property to facilitate some of the things that they're doing instead. So it's not like they're great customers to begin with. So to me, that's the real driver and why I believe it's important. That might be a little bit more altruistic. So there's the other side of, hey, it's the law and you got to do it. And with all of these enforcements that have come out, and with the rigorous licensing process that's going now across every state with PASPA, you got to do it. It's a must-have, because you don't want compliance to be the reason you get held behind for a license.
Yeah, it's very interesting, that side of the business. I try not to get into it because it's not like, I'm not gonna say it's not really like the fun side of the business, to be honest with you. Like, it's not something that I'm like getting up in the morning. I can't wait to catch someone trying to do some anti-money laundering. But I have people that I work with at Profit that's what they love. Like, that's the reason they get up in the morning. And hey, we appreciate every single one of them, and everybody like yourself in the industry, because I think it is important, right? I can't remember the books, I apologize, but I just remember hearing the stories of, like, right back in the day, you'd have someone come into one casino, take one side for 500,000. You have someone go into another casino, take the other side for 500,000, both minus 110, so you lose a little juice, and you walk away with quote unquote clean money at that point, and then you got nothing to worry about. And it was always very interesting when it's like, yeah, I'm willing to lose a couple $1,000s to be able to say, like, I got this money gambling. Like, now it's clean, which is super ironic in its own state, right? But, like, now it's clean money, as weirdly as that sounds. And I think, like, that's kind of the thing we need to get rid of, right? Like, where is that money coming from? As you said, human trafficking. Like, yeah, there's a lot of bad people out there that can potentially use casinos in some way, shape, or form to make sure that they're able to get their money in however they like. So appreciate you and what you do, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you made an interesting point there about how they're willing to lose some of that money, right, to get the clean money. And I think, one of the big reasons why is you look at studies, and the cost of money laundering can be anywhere from, 30 to 50% of, a trafficker's or whomever's, revenue. And so when you think about, losing that like small percentage at the casino, it's really not that much, especially when you kind of put it into the context of, you may not have to build these large networks of trust and these front businesses and things like that. If you can just go to a high limit slot machine, and where you're hitting jackpots fairly frequently, that's giving you a taxable document that says you have legitimate income. And as long as you're not having a player's card in, you don't have losses that you write it off against. So it just looks like pure winning. So it's incredibly attractive to go to a casino. So if we don't have these things in place to catch these people, I mean, it's ripe for the taking.
I believe that. So you helped Caesars build theirs. I know you had a little stint out in California as well. Tell us a little bit about what you did in Morongo?
Morongo Casino
Hell
Resort
yeah.
and Spa.
Yes, tell me a little bit about that. I know you got to build out this whole system ground up. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, so that was a really interesting opportunity. I mean, I enjoyed my time at Caesars. They were incredibly good to me. Like I said, 4.5 years, they let me come on as an intern, let me finish college and work around my hours, promoted me several times while I was there. But this opportunity came up to go to a tribal casino, which I'd never worked in tribal, in Southern California, and be the head of the anti-money laundering department. And, with how big Caesars Entertainment was, that wasn't going to happen anytime soon for me there. So it just seemed like a good kind of trial by fire way to learn of, if I really want to advance my career, I've got to take this risk and try to take this step, and, hopefully I don't stumble too hard and I'm successful. And when I got there, Morongo was actually going out for, they were looking to do an expansion, and I think they were looking to get finance for $250 million, and they needed a lot of updates to their AML program, and they asked me to come on board and do it. So, I mean, I went from being a technology and analytics manager over anti-money laundering at Caesars to having to do, every single policy and procedure as it comes to AML, and having to build out a team that does the CTRs, that, does the investigations for suspicious activity, does, enhance due diligence into high risk and high net worth players, as well as manage, getting technology in there, because everything was manual at the time, everything was paper, and then working through the change management that involved with like implementing this technology. And so, I mean, I got my hands into everything real fast. and it was incredibly stressful, but it paid off. We even went through, BSA IRS examination, and like any examination, it's not going to be 100% clean, but the results we were very happy with, and when I moved on from there, the person that I worked with to replace me because I was moving back to Vegas, we started to remediate the findings that were there to really shore up the program.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, getting down and dirty in that stuff, right? It was cool when you had a multi-billion-dollar organization behind you. You can kind of fall back on money every once in a while, right? Hey, we need more people to help. When you actually get to build it out, when you actually get to do that all yourself, that's kind of your baby at that point in time. And it sounds like you kicked ass doing it. And trial by fire. You make a great point. Like, see, sink or swim, man. It sounds like you swam, so that's important, right? You didn't fall to the bottom, and it sounds like they're doing better for it, and you got a pretty cool experience. So kudos, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely went underwater a few times, but
Yeah, but you
didn't drown.
just got to get the nose right above, right? That's all you got to do, man. And so you already alluded to consulting a little bit, so we didn't need to dive too deep into that. I do want to get to Kinectify. That's what we're here to talk about. That is the company that you work for. You're now the director of business development at Kinectify. I have to assume it has something to do with anti-money laundering. I'm pretty sure I actually know kind of a little bit about it, but you tell us, Sean. What exactly do you guys do at Kinectify?
So Kinectify is anti-money laundering specifically
Hey.
for casinos. I think what we've seen historically in the casino industry is that there hasn't been a lot of like fintech type products, modern technology when it comes to compliance and specifically anti-money laundering. Mostly what we've seen, especially after those enforcement actions started to come out, is a lot of these, manufacturers and large companies that have existed in the industry, like an Every or Konami, tried to address the industry's concerns once these penalties started coming out and tried to build some software around it. But it's not really their core competency, so to speak, right? And they're not true fintech companies. So our CEO and founder, Joseph, who's spent time, as an investigator, did Middle East due diligence for large banks, worked at Caesars also, was the director of compliance for a fintech company and cannabis compliance as well. When he came to the casino industry and saw this, he wanted to apply everything he had learned on the fintech side and founded Kinectify so that we could finally bring a modern technology solution to the AML space specifically built for casinos or I should say for gaming institutions, sports betting and casinos, by industry veterans. So it's not, a banking tool trying to come in and be reformatted for compliance. It is basically anybody who works here who isn't a software developer has probably been in the game for at least 10 years doing anti-money laundering compliance for gaming.
Why does the gambling industry take so long to evolve? Like, not evolve. Maybe that's not the best. Adopt new ideas like this. What, like, because you're talking 2016, right?
Yeah, I mean, you started to see technologies emerge, maybe. I mean, your enforcement action started coming really in like 2013. I think that was when like the big Sands one came in for like $34.7 million or something crazy like that. And so you started to see technologies come along, but it kind of stagnated once it got to, what we would say is like your basic transaction aggregation software. I think part of it, right, is for anti-money laundering, in banking, it's a huge industry. You've got literally trillions of dollars of assets flowing through the financial system. The casino industry is a lot smaller, right? So I think part of it is a lot of companies maybe didn't think the profitability was there to truly build out a product. I think another part of it is anytime there's a heavily regulated environment, which gaming is pretty heavily regulated. One, it's concerning for companies to jump into, to want to invest to, and two, it's hard to innovate sometimes because regulations can hold you behind. Fortunately, where we're at now, there's not too much holding AML behind in terms of technology innovation. So, since in his garage he started prototyping software back in 2020, Joseph was just kind of off to the races and building it out and getting our CTO on board and getting to where we are today.
And now with the legal, the repeal of PASPA and now pretty much sports betting sweeping the country, because I just had a conversation about this, which was awesome, but like tax dollars were heavily spent in 20 and 21, and a lot of states realized they needed to find a way where you could kind of put together like a 5-6 team committee pay them too many dollars, flip a switch, and allow sports betting to come on, where you just get tax dollars from everybody, which is pretty sweet. That's kind of the cynical view of it, but like, let's
Sure,
be
of
honest,
course.
we really all these states needed it. So that's why I think it has swept the country as quickly as it has. Um, with that being said, how much easier has it been for you guys to find business? You as the business development manager, right, or director of business development, like, are you reaching out to every single one of these books? Are you reaching out to the guys at Profit, right? Like, where are you going to find business to help solve this problem?
I think it's a little different from with like online than it is with brick and mortar. Brick and mortar, I've been working in for a long time, so traditionally, I've reached out to a lot of the compliance officers in my network that I've built relationships with over time. With online, it's a little different in that such a big part of it is being able to scale and get into new jurisdictions, right? So a lot of times we're talking to or working with whoever's leading the strategy initiative, whether it's a chief strategy officer or whether it's, maybe a business development person, kind of an SVP at that level, because they're trying to remove any roadblocks there possibly could be to them getting licensed in a new jurisdiction. And so we're almost working with operations more than we're working with compliance to kind of start talking about the solution. And then assuming that they, like what we're pitching, then we'll actually meet with compliance. We'll show them the whole solution, and then we can really get into the weeds, into the stuff that they love, that the strategy people don't care to see. And that's kind of how we've seen that flow so far. Not to say that's how it works every time, but a lot of the time right now.
No, and that really makes sense. I mean, I've worked at multiple gambling institutions at this point. Ops kind of makes the world go round a little bit, if we're being honest. I've pretty much enjoyed everybody I've worked with in the ops, both op departments that I've worked with. But it feels like they carry a little bit more weight, and understandably so, right? Like, if
Yeah.
your operations aren't working, why the hell are we even bothering? So it's very smart on your part, probably the years and years that you've had to understand. Well, hey, let's make sure we get to these guys, and yeah, once we sell them on what they want, which is getting into new jurisdictions and finding more people to bet, right? Then we'll go to the people that actually are like, wait, we need this. This sounds great. Let's take advantage of it. So kudos and congratulations on that one, Sean. I think that's pretty smart. And I guess here's a fun one. Like, why should people be using Kinectify? Do you guys have competitors they could possibly use? Can't they do this stuff on their own? You guys are a new company. Like, why you guys over, one of those other options?
So I'll start backwards a little bit with, can they do this on their own? I mean, when you're thinking about what you have to do for anti-money laundering, it's a big part of it is analyzing transactions to surface patterns of suspicious activity, right? And especially if you talk about online casinos or brick and mortar casinos, um, it's a ton of transaction volume. I mean, it's not something that you can just throw into a spreadsheet and start to analyze. And maybe you have Microsoft Power BI or ACL queries or some kind of SQL queries, but that's really only doing some basic querying to get like a possible alert to investigate, but it's really not arming investigators and analysts with everything they need to look and resolve or either file reports on suspicious activity. That requires some modern technology, a little bit more advanced algorithms, some risk scoring capabilities. So it's not easy to do on your own. It's expensive, and frankly, IT and product departments are, their time is better spent on keeping operations going, which is what they're incredible at. So it's what they should focus on rather than trying to build this other thing that they're going to have to maintain that isn't maybe necessarily their area of expertise. And so they're going to get possibly a watered down product that gets outdated over time that isn't as useful to compliance. As to why us over our competitors, frankly, I haven't seen anybody that has the amount of features or has as modern of a technology stack as we use to really bring together all the data in a way that's easy to make decisions and also easy to eliminate false positives. Our solution provides operators with the ability to scale easily without having to bring on, just throw tons of resources at each new state that goes online. Really take a risk-based approach to it and say, okay, based off this new state, we're going to generate this many alerts, probably have these amount of investigations. Maybe we need one more person, but based on our, thresholds and all the automations we've been able to put in place, we can go into this state pretty comfortably.
That is awesome. You've practiced that before? Because it sounds like it.
Honestly, I hadn't taken a stab at saying it that way before, so I'm happy with how it came out.
It was a great job, man. We'll clip that. We'll send that to your boss. Don't you worry about it, man. We're gonna get you that year-end bonus you deserve. But no, in sincerity, like I think it's extremely important, right? And it really comes down to resources. If it makes sense for a company, and again, as you said, going into new jurisdictions, being able to handle the amount. Right, like just the sheer volume of number of bets and the amount of handle, like even at some of these small books, you'd be surprised at how big that handle is, right? Like we're talking this Caesars, DraftKings, FanDuel's, BetMGM, that number's significantly higher, but even some of these small books, right? We're talking millions of dollars a day in certain situations, right? And it's a lot. And you brought up something interesting as well that I'd love to talk a little bit more about, the patterns and the false positives. Like, is this just like, you just kind of like, how do you guys know what does the pattern look like? How do you guys just, you've seen it so many times, it's like, hey, we've seen this before kind of thing, or we just kind of understand the psychology of why they're trying to do this, but oh wait, this kind of looks similar, but maybe this is a false positive. Like, how do you guys even look at that and know what you're looking at?
So there's a couple layers to it. I mean, there's like industry best practices, right? So there's types of analysis that have developed over time that everybody's using, right? So looking for minimal gaming with large transactions. If you're talking about online, looking at rapid deposits, rapid withdrawals, maybe multiple logins from a single device ID, or maybe kind of the flip around of one account logging in from multiple device IDs, just things like that are not necessarily signs of gaming, but signs of trying to do something else. So, the most logical approach to take to it is, does what they're doing seem to have a legitimate gaming purpose? And if not, you probably can create an alert around it. And then there's the second part of it is, okay, well, once we have these alerts, it could be a false positive, like we alluded to, right? So how do we identify those false positives? Well, what we've done on Kinectify's side is we've said, okay, well, what does an investigator do for every single minimal gaming investigation, for every single structuring investigation? Are those fixed data points in the system that they investigate? Well, then based on that, can we do something to try to eliminate those false positives, because we're bringing in all of those data points? And so we build these more complex algorithms that kind of output like, hey, this probably isn't going to be suspicious, or you want to look at this immediately because there's definitely something going on here.
Love it. Yeah, I would much rather you do that stuff than me, so appreciate you again there, Sean. I think that's awesome. But no, man, I think it's a really important piece of this giant industry that we both love so much. I, again, appreciate that you like this stuff, because we need more people like you paying attention to it, because there's a lot of people out there that will try and take advantage. Take advantage of the casinos. Is that like a cute thing to say, right? They're going to be fine. But really, it's the reasons why they're doing it. I'm not too worried about the casinos themselves. It's the people that they may be affecting along the way. So I appreciate you guys for what you do. But this has been fantastic. Sincerely appreciate the conversation about the industry, what you've done, how you've done it, how you're helping out the industry as a whole, especially, again, as this one that I love so much. So, Sean, really appreciate it. Sean Topchi, there we go, Director of Business Development at Kinectify. Really appreciate your time today, Sean. Thanks.
Michael, thank you so much for having me on. And I know I've said it before, but huge fan of Profit Exchange. Hope to see it in Nevada one day, but I know that's probably a little further out. But I love the idea of exchanges. I think it's incredible. As a sports bettor, who doesn't want to be able to keep more of their money? So you guys have an awesome business model, and I can't wait to see you succeed.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, Nevada might be a little, that might be very far down the line, as we kind of know. But hey,
wishful thinking.
Yes, cross your fingers for me, cross your fingers for you, man. I'd love to come out and visit you and watch your place to bet on the app. But no, again, one more time, Sean Topchi. There we go. I don't know why I can't say your last name that well anymore.
That's all right.
Appreciate your time. Time's the only thing we don't get more of, so thank you for that. Thank you for the audience for listening. But other than that, hope you have a great rest of your day, man. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.